And we're live.
Welcome back, everybody, to a very special episode of the WTTA. I wouldn't even call this an episode. It's going to possibly be an episode, but it's a conversation. It's a new idea that Kevin and I are kicking around. And Derek, you're going to be our inaugural guest for this type of thing.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, I hope you feel good about it. But I'm being joined today by Kevin Berry. He is the marketing. You're almost like the ERP system of Walk Talk America. Um, Obviously, it's been nice to have you come to the forefront a little bit because you bring a lot to the table. And I'm also being joined by Derek LeBlanc from Kids S.A.F.E. Derek and I have had a relationship, a friendship for many, many years. And the reason why I wanted to bring you into this conversation is because, I value that friendship. I feel like you're good checks and balances for me. I wish people could hear our private conversations. Everybody thinks that everybody agrees on everything when it comes to gun world, and sometimes we don't, right? And we need people to challenge the things we say. And Derek, you do a very good job of that. Sometimes it annoys the out of me, but I do appreciate where you're coming from. I think there are funny conversations. There have been times when we've been lost in the text and you actually have to call and be like, what the hell? Because we're going back and forth, but it's all love and it's all good. And I think that you're the perfect person to bring on this inaugural conversation about educating the youth with firearms, and kind of talking about why it's important we do that, and also deconstructing a lot of the data that's out there that we're seeing, because regardless of the data, how you feel about the data, we both believe that one kid is too many, right? And that's one of those things where we are in agreement that you never stop working towards that. You may never get there, but you never stop working towards that. And before we kick this off, I just want to say, what have you been up to, man? Like, what do you got going on?
So I've been really busy. It's thanks for having me, and I kind of piggyback on what you said. I do appreciate our conversations, and what I love is sometimes in our positions we have to get outside of our echo chamber, and so sometimes what makes sense up here might not make sense when it comes out or goes down the pipeline, and so just having friendly conversations to kind of say. Especially when it comes to messaging and imaging, it's important that the optics are there, and so that's where I'm glad where we can kind of have these conversations. I'm thankful to be here. The Kids Safe Foundation, we're a nonprofit based in Oregon. And so we've gone over 29,000 kids reached in 5 states since 2016. And now we're planning for a Midwest tour, which is going to give us another 4 states. And that's going to be coming up next month. So there's been a lot of planning that's going into that. And so I'm glad to be here to kind of talk a little bit about that, but also talk about data. Data is really, really important, especially for both of what we're doing as organizations, because we have to understand how the data is being influenced and manipulated, which ultimately is affecting our ability to present information that's factual.
Yeah, Kevin, we look at it a lot, right? And we're always looking for numbers. And what we found over the last couple of weeks, especially when we've been just trying to look for the data, is that it's all over the place. I mean, which is very frustrating. I mean, you would just go from a lot of it does come from the anti-gun side, right? And once again, I want to say that regardless, I don't look at those numbers with fear or anger or emotion, right? Because the way I look at it is like those numbers, I could spin those to why it's so important for what Derek does or what Walk the Talk America does. So it's like, regardless, whatever you're trying to put out there to freak somebody out, where it does frustrate me is it's a little intellectually dishonest, right? Because you're trying to make a point and you're lumping a lot of things that have different solutions together to make your point, but really playing off of people's emotion and not, examining that there's no one size fits all solution and each one might be different. And some of them you might not even want to touch, right? Like, let's face it. I'm going to come out and say it. I think one of the biggest issues is that you have a bunch of underprivileged, underserved kids shooting each other in these urban cities, and the average person doesn't even know how to approach that, right? Whether take racism out of it, right? We don't care about them. We don't care about them, right? Take that out of it for a second. they don't even know how to approach it because, I didn't know for many years how to approach it. I have an idea of how to approach it now, thanks to people like, Devin Perkins and Maj Toure. Like, right. It just takes a lot of hard work, a lot of work that people won't want to do. But, people, when they think about their children, they tend to think about the situation their children are in, right? Whether you're, affluent and you're from Beverly Hills, whatever, like the things that are going to concern you probably are what the media shows you that are dangerous. It's like the mass shootings in school. I know my daughters come home from school, or they used to, and they had great fears about mass shootings in schools. And I had to sit down and explain to them that that is a rare occurrence, although tragic. It's a very rare occurrence. So where I get frustrated when I look at these numbers is just the intellectual dishonesty to make that point. I get it that you need to make clickbait headlines, right? But I still feel like within the data, like, and I want to kind of jump into this stuff, Kevin, and I hope you have some stuff queued up that we can discuss and kind of let Derek cook on this stuff, because Derek really does look at these numbers and has opinions. But, I look at this stuff and I go, okay, they don't do enough. They don't do a good enough job of explaining the why, or they bury, we had a conversation about something today where they buried the definitions of youth violence into 4 different categories, but they use it at the very end of the article, right? So they gave you all this information to fire you up, and then at the very end, they kind of just said, "Oh yeah, and this is how we define the categories." But yeah, so here's one we want to look at. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this one?
Can hit the mute button and unmute myself.
Kevin, what are your thoughts about learning?
I think this one's perfect. I think this one gives us an opportunity to maybe not necessarily poke some holes, but have some critiques on, just like we received critiques when we did our survey that were valid, and we even wanted some things to be better. And then also some of this stuff is like a softball right down the middle to support Derek and Devin. And we'll get to that softball, and we'll see who wants to hit a home run with it. But it's right there to kind of wrap all together for a lot of support with what Derek and Devin they're doing.
Yeah, Derek, what are your thoughts when you first read this one?
Well, I mean, I was skeptical when I first saw it, just because knowing who it's coming from. And
by the way, you're skeptical of everything.
I am. You've got to
not a
earn
bad
my
place
trust.
to be, but
No, I'm the ultimate cynic, right? And part of it is just because of my experience doing this and reading data and understanding narratives and seeing commonalities in language. I will give you some props here. Responsible storage is in this study. So I will give you that, even though I'm not going to use that term, but it's here. And so that says a lot about this study that we're going to talk about. But I mean, ultimately it comes down to, I mean, I started doing the rough statistics as I was kind of unpacking this today to prep for this interview. And so I was looking at the numbers. I mean, they only polled 3,000 people, so that's not a huge cross section. So I'm kind of skeptical on who they chose. And so in that, I just started doing rough statistics, and I sent you guys a funny video that I put together where I used their own statistics, which I created on my calculator on my phone, and I presented the information to you guys in a way that a mathematician would. And so this stuff right here, it's easy to kind of say that they're trying to address this topic without actually addressing this topic, because what they're doing is they're addressing things that they're already affiliated with Moms Demand Action or Everytown or the Be Smart program. And so they're basically, their cross section is skewed, and it's skewed to the fact where they're probably trying to present this information so they can get more funding from the gun violence prevention office, which is a new national, I don't know, I don't want to say it was what, $400 million they have worth of funding. And what they're going to do is they're going to give all that funding to organizations like this that are going to support their position, and they're going to continue to kick the can down the road. People are going to die, and then they're going to say, oh, we need a new law. And it's like, well, we have 22,000 laws on the books. When are we going to start enforcing the ones that we have that possibly could work if they're properly used? And so, from that, I saw a lot of stuff that was the messaging is very much on point with something that every town and moms demand action. And I'm trying not to be super cynical of this, but I know where it's going to go. And so that's kind of the biggest red flags for me is if I already know where they're going to go for the information, this is not a valid survey or study that I would even give any weight to. And obviously we're giving it weight because we're talking about it, but this is just an opportunity for us to let the public know and the people that are following this data that is being put out by these different organizations is quoted like it's the science, yet it's far from the science. And I proved that with my calculator just a little bit ago because I was able to break down their numbers, and I looked at death per 100,000, which is 6 per 100,000 when it comes to kids. Obviously their age groups is very suspect because they're classifying a kid up to 19 years of age, which I don't believe is accurate. I think it's definitely misleading. And so from that, I was able to break down the population of the country, which is 342 million people estimated in this country. And if we look at, and then I was able to do the math where if I was going to trust their study, over 20,000 kids would die per year because of a firearm if I was going to treat this study like it's the gospel, and it's not the gospel. And that's why I'm glad we're here to kind of talk about it, to kind of let people know that is there's good data out there, and there's also data that's not going to be good, but this stuff is going to be picked up by the media. This is going to be the gospel, so we all have to be aware of that.
And I think it's hard because there's so much inconsistencies. I know Mike and you kind of have a collaborative article that's coming out. Some of those statistics are 1 to 17, some are 1 to 18, 1 to 19.
Hmm.
There's no nationwide definition for we define a child as age 1 to 17 or 2 to 17.
Hmm.
There's no consistency. So it is hard to find consistency of the numbers matching up. But I would be interested too if we had the opportunity to talk with somebody on this ad council research team. Were they happy with this demographics of the gun ownerships? It's not gun owners, it's of households. So that doesn't even necessarily mean gun owners. Were they disappointed? Were they wanting to reach more, but they have a tough time reaching gun owners? That would be interesting to find out. Or was it kind of purposely done this way to give some answers? Who knows? Mike, what do you think about the demographics? I think you're muted now. You made fun of me. Now you're muted.
What I was about to say to you, I should probably learn how to do this. What I was about to say to you is the 0 to 1, right? They always throw that number out. And I never understood why. I mean, I do know why. they're trying to bring a number up higher, right? But can a baby who's 0 to 1 years old be shot in a negligent situation? Absolutely. So why are you throwing that number out there? That number needs to go in there. And then obviously you have 17, 18, 19. I just watched a clip on Instagram that came up on my page, and it was of Jesse Ventura. Remember the wrestler, the gentleman who was in Predator?
Hmm.
It's kind of polarizing, but what he was saying made a lot of sense. He said that when he went to Vietnam and after he was done with his tour, he wanted to go right back. And they were like, you can't do that. You have to take some time before you can go back for a second tour. And they kept saying to him, why do you want to go back? He says, because I'm a man over there. Like you send me over there with my weapon. I could have a beer. I could do whatever I want. I come back here and I can't do anything. Right. So I think about when I think of an 18-year-old, it's hard for me to think of a child because in the United States at 18, you're allowed to do a lot of things that probably you shouldn't be allowed to do. Right. Like you could star in a porno for Christ's sakes. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to gun violence, like we consider 18-year-olds as the same as pediatrics, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it just,
yeah.
no one hears the word pediatrics and thinks an 18 or 19-year-old. I'm sorry. Even if it's by definition, like when you say my pediatrician, I don't think of my 18-year-old daughter going there. My daughter goes to a doctor. right? She went to a
Yep.
pediatrician when she was young. So I have an issue with the numbers just because of the way that it's presented. And I think it's, if I want to, I don't want to hog this time, but I do want to circle back to, like, Derek has always been a big proponent of me going to places that typically the gun side doesn't go into to have discussions. And I know that Derek is a person that goes to places where the gun side usually won't go to. And I know this because I've shown up at meetings and Derek has been on there and I didn't even know it. Right. And we saw each other. It's like, oh, you're on this. Right. And, and this is why this is important, because if there's no checks and balances, like Derek calling me when we put out something that he sees as goofy, they don't get checked and there's no balance. Right. So they get to control a complete narrative. So this is why it's frustrating. But one of the things that was really fun today was watching Derek send us a screenshot of his calculator while he was calculating these numbers. Like you literally recorded your own phone while you were doing the
Yep.
numbers and sent it over to us. So yeah, these numbers are goofy,
And there was nothing special. That was all real time. And I actually posted on my personal Facebook page and put it in my gun group, because it's laughable. And if we're going to trust their data as the gospel, I mean, there'd be 100,000 people dead per year. And it comes back to, we don't want to see anybody die. That's why we're doing the work that we're doing, is we want to save lives, we want to preserve lives, we want to preserve liberty, we want to pass our freedoms and our traditions onto our children. And we do that by making sure that we're in those rooms. And it's really, really dangerous right now, because the way things are so polarizing is it's always one side has the microphone, instead of people in the middle like you and I, where we could bring everybody together if people would just trust us and say, okay, we'll just give them the opportunity to speak. And instead, we have to kind of make our way into these rooms where we're not wanted to be there, but we have to be there because we have to have a voice for our gun owners, because our gun owners deserve to have the opportunity to be heard. Their fears and their emotions are valid, because of all the stuff that's happening politically, which is leading to a higher rate of mental health issues. And it's basically kicking this can down the road. And so that's why it's my view, and I've been doing this a very long time, where I get into those rooms. I go into the Moms Demand Action meeting rooms. I go in there and I listen to them. I find out what their fears are, because if once I know where they're going with the conversation, then I can create a message that maybe could make sense to them, where they could see our perspective and as gun owners. And they're going to believe everything that they're going to read and see, until they have either a change of heart or a different perspective that could resonate and make sense with them.
Moving down the report, I got two things that jump out to me with this graphic, but what do you guys see with this little page that they dedicated this graphic to?
I think the biggest thing that and this goes back to the statistics that I made here earlier, is the biggest problem that I see in young children that I work with, is the fact that these kids do not know that there's not a school shooting issue. And what I mean by that is, basically, it could either be a teacher, it could be a parent that's projecting that fear onto the child, which is making them think that, today could be their last day at going to school. And that's not the case. From a rough statistical search that I put together, basically, on average, there's 63 million school aged children in this country. And there's a 1 in 1.575 million chance of them being hurt or killed at school. Okay. And if we look at a similar analogy, would be struck by lightning. So struck by lightning is a 1 in 700,000 chance of being struck by lightning. And that's somebody that's walking down the street, and lightning hits them where they're at. So I feel that this is a manipulation, because it's easy to use fear and emotion to control, and that's what's happening, which is not good for the youth's mental health, because they don't have the social skills that you and I have as adults to understand that that's not based in reality. And so that's where, the stuff that we're trying to do together is really, really important, because we got to bring the facts to the conversation, and we have to be the adults in the room, and know that we're going to speak to the audience in a way that it's not going to be fearful, but it's going to be factual. And that's kind of the difference. And that's kind of one thing that stuck with me is yes, one kid at getting hurt at school is too many, but when it's on average 40 per year that get hurt or die at school, it's not like the sky is falling like they're trying to make it out to be. Even though, I mean, I want to be very clear, I don't want to see a single kid get hurt, but it's just not rational thought.
Yeah, it's that delicate balance because when you're no one wants to hear when you're talking about a school shooting that, oh, don't worry, that doesn't happen that often, right? Like
Yeah.
people, that doesn't make people feel better, especially when one is too many.
Mhm.
So you have this like small window, especially when I talk. I don't know about for you, Derek, but like I have this small window where I have to. We have this Venn diagram that we use at Walk Talk America, which you can go to our Instagram page, and I think we have it pinned, right, Kevin, at the top. But um, I use that Venn diagram when I speak, and I know I got a few seconds, right, because it's an emotional one, because it shows the number of mass shootings, right? Then it ties gun deaths and suicides together in this Venn diagram. But the mass shooting circle is so tiny. But nobody wants to hear me go up there and say, hey, don't worry about this. This isn't, this doesn't really happen. It's like,
Mhm.
no, they don't want to hear that. So what I got to do is explain to them, hey, that's what's going to charge you emotionally. And then I always go back to the whole Mandalay Bay example, right? And I think that helps people, because I'm not saying let's not care about this, but I'm saying we have a Mandalay Bay shooting every day. We actually have more than a Mandalay Bay shooting every day. We have 69. I think now it's at 69. Some of the numbers show us as high as like 73, 74. But the latest data that I'm getting from Mental Health America is they believe 69. 59 was the Mandalay Bay shooting. So now we have 10 more than that every single day, suicide by firearm, right? There's where the real issue is. And that's, quite frankly, one of the only issues that we could really make a dent in. Suicide is the only death I believe that we really can make a dent in, is all suicide, not just suicide by firearm, right? But suicide is one that we can do. We can't do anything if you walk outside and somebody loses control of their car and runs you over. We can't do anything if somebody touches the third wire of a train track. You know what I mean? The rail. Like there are certain things that we can kind of tell them, hey, don't do that. But accidents happen. Things happen. I saw there was a plane crash the other day in Denver. Accidents happen. Things happen. As far as this data, and this is directed towards you, Derek, I almost feel like when they jack these numbers up that it could potentially give you more credibility to why you do what you do. So you must be in a hard spot, because you don't want to make the industry look bad, but at the same time, if you're like, yeah, these numbers are high and this is why I'm here to save it, right? Like this is why what I do is why it's so important. So how do you work with that?
Well, what we have to understand is one thing we have to do is like what you it was is we have to show an emotional connection. If I can get an emotional connection to my audience, then I can redirect and I can re-educate. And so, I don't come in there and start pointing fingers. I understand that I make the audience understand that there is a problem. There's things that we do need to do better, and then I could provide a solution. A solution would be, educating our kids about, the dangers of unsecured firearms. And education will work if given the opportunity. And so I think that's what's not being utilized effectively here, is because it's something that's new, that's never been tried before, and so there's some hesitation. But we also have to look at how much money is associated with the gun control movement. And so when we put out information like this in this study, that's used to fundraise, that's used to have clickbait ads. This is a way to rally the base so they can either get volunteers involved, or they can actually fundraise off of these types of situations. So, I mean, there's literally billions of dollars attached to the gun control movement, and so people do not want to give up that type of revenue because obviously they've become accustomed to living a certain lifestyle, and that's kind of counterproductive to the safety of our country. And so, we just we have to be frank and call it for what it is. And it's basically a Ponzi scheme. It's not designed to really better any of our lives. What it's designed to do is to keep us in separate camps where we can't come together and actually fix the problems that we have. And so that's kind of what I see.
G-Web had a question. Are teachers really scared of being shot? Not rational, or do they understand the numbers are just being manipulative? And this was kind of one of my takeaways, is the big difference between what people perceive as a national problem in the US and their local community. There's a huge gap there between 91% and 59% of, you could almost make the assumption that people are seeing it as a huge problem that the media is constantly putting out there that makes it more prevalent, but locally it's not as prevalent, but people are still scared of. What would you guys think about his question?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not really sure. I don't talk to a lot of teachers. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, to be honest, and I don't want to speak in generalities. I mean, for the most part, our educational system is very left of center, and especially being from Oregon, that's very much the case. And in that situation, you're not going to have kind of free thought. You're going to basically believe it's kind of a herd mentality where you're going to believe what you're told to believe. In Oregon, the teachers union is the most powerful union in the state, and so a lot of times these teachers are getting their preconceived biases from either the higher ups, and so it doesn't always equate to free thought, and which is definitely dangerous to everybody involved, because there's a lot of fear, and it leads back to your mental health, what you guys do, because it's affecting our youth in a way where they're afraid to do certain activities, and they shouldn't be. I mean, the biggest thing that we should be doing is we should be training and arming our staff of our schools. We should have armed security, like school resource officers. We should be hardening our schools. I mean, we're protecting politicians and banks with guys with guns. Why aren't we doing that for our most valuable resource, our children? And that's my biggest complaint, is we're so focused on the tit for tat that we're not focusing on the true fundamental protection of our children, and we wonder why this stuff continues to happen. And so they and there's a thought process involved where they think that they can just wish guns away and guns are going to go away. And so that's not that's detached from any sort of reality, because guns are not going to go away. There's 450 million estimated guns in this country. There's 110 a million estimated gun owners. We're not going to just surrender our guns. They're not going anywhere. So the next thing we could do is we need to coexist. And so that means the people that are afraid of guns need to understand that the guns that are in our society, they serve a purpose. They could be for hunting, they could be sporting, they could be for defensive purposes. And so when we're talking in a school environment, they definitely serve a purpose, and that's to protect those children and the staff. And so that's something where we got to change that kind of thought process, where wishing a gun was not in that situation is going to be a good thing, because we see it all the time. That's definitely not a good thing. So
Yeah,
that's
I hear these strange arguments against armed teachers, and it's really interesting to me because I don't believe you just arm all teachers. I mean,
no.
some people don't want to have anything to do with a gun, and that's perfectly fine. But if I have a teacher that wants to be armed and they want to take firearms ownership, responsibility, and safety, all those things serious, and they're willing to say like, hey, put me through whatever training you want, I would love to
Yeah.
be the person at that school. I think you have a great candidate. And I used to say this to like my mother, because we get in arguments about it, because sometimes she can't look down the field, oh, we shouldn't be arming teachers. And it's like, are you telling me that a teacher who's someone who is they're supposed to educate, right? They're supposed to be
Yeah.
smart in some level. Like, you're telling me that they can't be a better shooter? They can't handle a gun better than, say, some police officers who never take any training? I mean, G Webb said, how many teachers? I don't hang out with a lot of teachers, but I do know a lot of cops. And I do know a lot of cops. When I ask them, how often do you train with your firearm? They say once a year when I qualify.
Yeah.
That's it. Right.
It's,
But
it's,
we put
it's
faith. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. One thing I will bring up in this situation is how many teachers have died protecting their children instinctively,
Hmm.
but they are unarmed. And so their natural instinct is to protect those children. Why not give them the opportunity to do so, because they've been trained, they've been vetted. I highly encourage people under to check out Faster Saves Lives. They're out of Ohio and Colorado. They have a program where they train teachers to carry firearms on school grounds, obviously with proper training and vetting. And it's a great organization, so I highly encourage you to check them out. And so that's kind of where our greatest resources are kids. We have to protect them. It comes through
Yeah.
making sure they don't get hurt with an unsecured firearm, but also they're when they're in care of somebody else, they're safe because they've been educated on gun safety. But also when they're going to school, that they have the proper protection there.
One of the biggest takeaways I saw when I first saw this graph is suicide's not even on it. It's not even a concern for these survey respondents. Mike, what do you think about that, knowing the prevalence of suicide with firearms
Yeah.
in the adult population and even the kids?
I think it's ridiculous, right? Because I mean, once again, is leaving that type of information out just does a disservice. There's so many people that suffer mentally, and we're not here to blame the gun, but the gun is one of the most effective ways for self-deletion, and that needs to be addressed, right? I tell people all the time, it's funny. They always say like, "Why do you focus on the gun?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'm from the gun industry, and it's something I can do, right? With my connections in this industry, it's something that I can do. I can get my people to start thinking about this, or maybe offer resources, whatever. If I worked in ropes, maybe I would do ropes. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But although ropes are not, people don't die by rope as much as they do by firearm when it comes to suicide. It's still up there, but it's a fraction of what it is. So, I think when you leave suicide out of any conversation when it comes to firearms, you have an ulterior motive. Unless you're like trying to pinpoint exactly what you want to solve an issue, right? Like, I'm not talking about this. I'm leaving this out because I am laser focused on fixing this issue. But that means you can't lump all the other stuff in there together. So that's how I feel about it. I feel it's ridiculous to leave suicide out of any. Chris is right. Chris Jacomek's in the chat, and leaving out suicide is not cool.
I love the way that they quote when they're quoting somebody. They say female 29, parent non-gun owner, or they will say gun owner. Like that's supposed to give some sort of credibility. It's like, a lot of this stuff is. It's almost like I use the kind of the analogies like I'm pro 2A, but I'm pro 2A,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody needs a semi-automatic rifle, and so that when I see stuff like this, it's kind of laughable, and I try not to be so cynical that I can't see the forest for the trees, but in reality, I understand the audience. And so what they're trying to do, this is kind of, you said it earlier, it's a psyop. It's a psyop because basically they know their crowd is going to see gun owner and like, oh, this is legit. We should trust this.
Yeah,
Here's
they
some
always
light through
roll
the
out there.
trees. Of 74% of total survey respondents think having a gun at home makes them safer, even more so among parents, which is 80% compared to 71. So that's it, showing support of being a gun owner. So this is kind of a setup. And then we'll go down a little bit more. This is just their perception of leading cause. We can come back to this. But then this is the big one I saw, and what kind of originally queued up this conversation is the top response of thing that would make an impact for these issues would be educating kids about gun safety. So they believe in guns make a safer home. So it's not, hey, let's remove all guns out of the home. And they also believe in educating kids about gun safety to be 89% of an impact. And then at the bottom is donating to violence prevention of 50% to not likely to make an impact. So
I
tying
love
those
that.
two to,
I love that.
tying those two together, there's your softball, Derek.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
the post on Kids Safe.
I
They're
saw
literally
this and
supporting you.
I was doing backflips when I was reading this. But I know, the cynical side, he's here talking in my ear, telling me what they're trying to do is they're trying to steer the audience towards the quote unquote be smart program, which is not actually gun safety. It's made by Everytown Moms Demand Action, and it's a way for them to say, you want your family to be safe, you need to get rid of your guns. That's the only way you're going to keep your kids safe. Oh, if you have guns in the home, you have to make sure you keep the gun in one safe and the ammunition in a separate safe. That's the only way you can keep your family safe. And I don't believe that. I see hands-on, I see 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds that are handling guns in a safe and controlled environment that are safer than many adults that I know. And so the fact that they're saying the quiet part out loud is something that's I think is a step in the right direction. But ultimately, what we have to see as gun owners, gun rights advocates, people that are in our positions, right, is they're trying to steer it to their team, and they're trying to take away our ability to educate our kids in an effective manner because of we have the experience and we know what we're doing, but they're trying to steer it in a way where they can get more funding for their orgs, which is going to take away the funding from ours.
And
Well,
it's also
and
an opportunity. Go ahead, Mike.
yeah, it's an opportunity. Absolutely. I agree. Kevin, if you want to expand on that, I got my own thoughts, but go ahead, say what you're going to say.
Because we see the top response is educating your kids about gun safety. So they're
Mhm.
supportive of that at 89%. 80% is the point you make, which walk the talk, and we get that with a lot of healthcare organizations asked to collaborate as well, trying to promote storing ammunition separate from the guns. When Mike or whoever is able to educate, well, that's not really realistic because a lot of people use it for defensive purposes and they have maybe promoting a staged lockbox or locking device or something like that, that prevents unauthorized access this way. But it seems like they're open to that conversation. They just don't fully understand it, which how could they when the media is presenting one side? Mike, would you have?
Yeah. No, I was going to say it's definitely an opportunity. All the everything that comes out of their mouths is an opportunity. To you know what I mean? Everything that they throw forward, there's a spin on it that we can take. And this goes back to my original point of, once again, like Derek, you saw through this and you said, here's where they're going with this. They're trying to push their agendas. If you don't think for 1 minute, like people say, oh, what you did with Walk the Talk America is brilliant because like you're leaning into the negative outcomes and you're using their language against them and you're going into their circles. Yeah, okay, that could be a play. I see what I do though as a bigger picture thing. I want to keep it ourselves. I want to keep it ourselves in the firearms community. But if you don't think for 1 minute that they said, okay, well, what if we get in this way? What if we start promoting the messages that they've been saying for years? They just say it to each other, right? We never ran campaigns and things like that. We had the Eddie the Eagle program, but the NRA made a choice to go a certain direction. But of course, they're going to come with their whole responsible storage messaging and websites and make the general public think that those are the only ones out there,
Mhm.
right? And like this is why it's
Mhm.
so important. Take Walk to Talk America out of pretend we don't exist. Derek, this is why it's so important to fund Derek, because Derek is doing this work and he actually cares about gun rights. He's never going to let anybody do anything backdoor, Trojan horse. He's just going to simply educate these kids. This is an education that is much needed. There's a story that I share every once in a while, but my first firing of the first time I fired a firearm, it was a negligent discharge because me and my friends did not understand one in the chamber. Okay. We found, talk about irresponsible storage of firearms. We found my friend knew where the gun was, but he said, I want to show you something. We were at his house. His friend was, his dad was actually a DEA agent, and his dad had a loaded Beretta in his bedside. And I remember my friend pulled the gun out and he was holding it and he dropped the magazine and he pointed the gun at the bed and he looked at me and he said, do you think this is still loaded? And Thank God I was smart enough to like put his arm down. I said, whoa, 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 let's go outside to the backyard, dude. Because he would have blown a hole in the bed and we wouldn't have been able to hide
Yeah,
that. So we
yeah.
go outside. He hands me the gun and I just pointed at the grass. Boom. Scared us to death. Scared the whole neighborhood to death. There was like construction workers like working. Like I had to go over there and talk to them. I was just like, yeah, da, 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 da. Like they were all like, oh, we didn't see anything. But my point is, if I would have just understood one in the chamber as a kid, that would have never even happened, right? So
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of what you do, Derek, just simply because I lived through it. I mean, imagine if we were just knuckleheads. Imagine if my friend shot me. Um, this is why it's so important. We assume that everybody knows, or we want to think in a perfect world, just stay away from that gun. Stay away from that gun. No, they go towards the gun. Kids go towards the gun, and you need to understand that
Absolutely.
if one kid in the circle would have taken Derek's class, like one of my other friends that was there would have taken Derek's class, they would have said, hell yeah, that gun is loaded, dude. Like, what are you
Yep.
doing? Put it down. You know what I mean? Or at least been able to clear it
Well,
if we're going to mess around with it.
and we have to
So,
look at it. We have to look at the way our kids see our guns, right? So, from a 5-year-old standpoint, guns are cool, which I totally agree. Guns are cool. They're glamorized on social media. They're glamorized in music videos. They're glamorized in video games, and so that's what's affecting their young minds and their perception of firearms. There's definitely a detachment from reality from what happens on a screen to reality, and as what you just brought up, and so without that vital education, that's how they continue to get hurt. And so that's something we never want to see, and it's something that it's easy to fix. It's us as parents being responsible and making sure that we're teaching our kids from a young age about firearm safety and normalizing it. We would be safer as a country if there was more education about firearms as opposed to so much negative, you know, animosity towards firearms. Because, you know, Jeff Cooper had a very famous quote where the gun has no moral stature. Like I'm probably butchering his quote, but it's the gun does not make these decisions on its own, and so the gun is not inherently good or evil. It takes the person behind it to make it evil, and so that's where education is so important.
Then moving further down, it kind of echoes that of parents are seeking answers of how do I bring it up? How do I say it right? To where if you're outside the 2A community and around a bunch of anti-guns, you wouldn't know, oh, kid safe. It's just like me, Mike, oh, that's obvious. Talk to Derek, he'll point you the right way. But it seems like a lot of parents or people are left like, oh, that seems like a good idea. I just don't know where to start.
Yeah, and a lot of it is because of the preconceived notions, the content that they're taking in. If parents didn't have firearms and didn't know anything about guns, they probably wouldn't reach out to one of our organizations. They probably wouldn't follow us. They would probably get information from their echo chamber, which is going to influence their behaviors. And so and ICG Webs brought something, abstinence is, like I an analogy I use every class is the hot burner. Okay. So Michael, you tell your 5-year-old not to touch that hot burner. What's the first thing he's gonna do? He's gonna go touch that burner. That's how our kids learn. Our kids learn through trial and error. They learn from the good and the bad. They learn from the pain. When it comes to a firearm, though, it could be life altering, it could be life changing, it could be fatal, and so that's where education is so important. And I come from a very even though I'm a pro gun guy, this is a pro safety message. And this is a message for every child in this country, not just the kids with guns inside the home. Because Michael, you have a young boy, he could go over for a play date to a friend's house, and you guys might not have guns inside your home, but his friend who says, hell, I know that you guys don't have guns inside the home. You want to see my dad's gun? I know where it's kept, and it's unlocked. And so that play date, they're going to a show and tell type situation. That's how your kid's going to get hurt. And so, having our heads in the sand and our letting our egos or our fear of learning something that maybe be out of our comfort zone actually is detrimental to the safety of our kids. And I've modeled our program similar to water safety because we teach every kid in this country how to swim because we don't want them to drown. That's the same principle for firearm safety. It's that basic, and so that's kind of my elevator speech.
Kevin, what else do we got in this?
Just seeing where we want. We gotta have a lot of wrap up thoughts, kind of takeaways they do, but we got through the bulk. I know Derek gave us another link if we want to jump over to that one.
Yeah, let's go
That
over
was
that
actually that was actually part of that study. So it was hyperlinked. So I was like, oh, okay, well, and that's where I created my video from. Oh, this is gun safety, folks. So let's pay attention to this.
This is the Be Smart website.
Yeah, yeah. So this
This
is
is
mom's
attached to Every Town and Mom's Demand.
yes, yes.
Okay.
So you'll notice that some of the colors are like some of our other organizations, and nothing. It's not based on reality. It's them saying that they're doing something, and this is a way for them to dilute the message of gun safety by and also try to pretend like they bring some kind of validity to this conversation, which they don't. I've seen people doing this at different events that they're tabling, and it's really really hard at these events for them to promote their idea of gun safety to people that are gun owners because they see right through it. They see that they don't understand the vernaculars, they don't understand how the firearm works, they don't know the basic operations and functions, they don't know what it's like to have a gun inside the home, and so basically it makes it look like they're not the subject matter experts because they're far from that. So
Yeah, you, and I. This is what I always tell people when that are affiliated with those organizations, right? Because not all of them are bad people.
no,
Some
no,
of them,
they mean well.
yeah, yeah, some of them mean well. They do. But I always tell them, I'm like, you're going to hit some people because not all gun owners are the same. Some gun owners buy a gun and they never see the thing. It stays locked away in a drawer or whatever. You know what I mean? Not everybody's the staunch to a like I'm in the culture. I'm shooting all the time. So you might get a few people, but you're not getting all gun owners. What are you going to say?
So Kevin, let's highlight this area. So this is what they're trying to give parents an option for secure storage. All of this stuff is old technology. This stuff like cable locks, like the NSSF is guilty of that's their hill. And they've put out what is it 37 million cable locks. Where's the attribute how many lives have been saved with a cable lock? They're easily defeated, doesn't prevent theft. So let's put the cable locks away. That's like 1980s technology. There's so much better technology. None of these things that they're mentioning here on the website have any kind of r- you know ease of use, ease of getting into to make sure that if like we're using a gun for defensive purpose, and so I feel that, it's either they don't know the topic of secure storage or they're very selective on what they're going to introduce to their audience. So I
It's
kind of want to
almost like they saw a speech from Mike talking about storing responsibly or securely, but then didn't know how to execute it. Like putting a locker and a lockbox together, not quite the same.
Yeah, I think I don't think they're cherry picking what they want. I think they don't know any better.
probably.
Um, I think it's more that like in their world, like any way you can lock it up is fine. You talk about the cable locks. When people ask my opinion of cable locks, I tell them, look, to me it's like a virtue signal, but you can use the opportunity if you're handing someone a cable lock or sending out a cable lock to provide resources and messaging that go along with that, right? I see that more as a symbol than I do an actual effective tool.
That's a good
So,
point.
I don't want to discourage anyone from thinking they're doing something great, but I do want to share a funny story. And I love my people at the NSSF. I really do. I love the NSSF. I love everybody that works there. But we were at this convention in Denver, and I was sitting at a table with the guys from Ruger, Smith & Wesson, Timmy O from Vera Safety, and I think Bill Broussard was up there talking about the amount of child safety cable locks they'd given through Project Child Safe. And I'm not, no kidding, as soon as he said the number, all of us at the table, this is awful, but all of us at the table said, which all went into the trash.
Yes.
It's like, it's just one of those things, like I said. But having said that, I do see it as a symbol, and I do think that there's message. I think it's just as important to have some good messaging to go along with it. And some people might use it. All right. I'm not going to say some people won't. Some people might. It's just not the way most gun owners, especially the ones that are listening to this show or running these circles, are going to choose to lock up a gun. We're just not going to do it.
Well, and I'm sorry to bag on them. Like I really I guess I hate being overshadowed, I guess, and not supported for the work that we're doing because we're on the same team. I guess my biggest concern was just the amount of focus that they put on a product. I have PDs that call me all the time. It's like, hey, you need 100 cable locks? Like, nope, I don't need any cable locks. I don't give out cable locks. I educate the kids on and the parents on good storage options. I don't refer any cable locks. But the PDs have this backlog of cable locks because NSSF just sends them out. And now they have storage rooms full of cable locks and they need a way to get rid of them. And I'm sorry, I just I don't give them out. I have some
Yeah,
on hand. So if a parent asks me, I will give them, but it's not something that's in my forefront.
yeah, that program I think does a great job of, like I said, virtue signal may be too strong, but when you're working with people that are not gun owners or people that generally are center left or maybe work in mental health and suicide prevention,
Mhm.
they think that's amazing,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Like,
For sure.
and I think what we're saying is let's go beyond amazing. Like, let's go
Yeah.
amazing and effective, right? But in NSSF's defense, Derek,
Yep.
you and I live this every day. Like, we live this every single day. We are Walk the Talk America. You are Kids Safe, right? NSSF does a lot. They do a
Oh,
lot,
for sure.
and
For sure.
they're
For
spread
sure.
thin. So to be like, NSSF, we need you to do this, we need you to do that, we need you to do that. Like, they're not just like, I am laser focused on this one area. So for them, I think they have to figure out ways that they can contribute into society and they don't necessarily have those resources to be like, hey, you're going to be solely this guy working on this issue. I would love for them to get there, and I think that's a bigger conversation. Maybe this one where we're starting to wrap this conversation up, but it goes back to the point of we got to stop. We got to start putting money into our own homegrown programs that come from the firearms industry instead of having people that kind of put their toe in the water, crossover. The crossover is good. It's good optically, that we're well liked and all that stuff. But at the same time, our programs need to come to the forefront. Our programs need to be the one, right? Like, I don't want anybody I want Derek teaching my kid about firearm safety, my 6-year-old, I don't want somebody from every town or mom's demand. I want somebody that's just going to focus on what I'm bringing the kid there for, not try to push them in a certain direction. Hey, you need to
Yeah.
store your gun in Canada and your ammunition in Mexico. It's the safest way to own a gun.
I don't know. Have you seen Mexico right now?
You bury it in a hole in the
or
desert.
Canada. No, and that's the thing is, like, I think if we're closing things out, I think it's important just to know that in this situation there are different sides, but you and I, the NSSF, we're all on the same team. And so we're working in the same direction. We might be in different lanes, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's all about helping protect people either through mental health or protecting their kids. And we're also trying to protect our fellow gun owners because it's something that's important to us, and we have to have a seat at the table. And that's one of the I think that's one of the most heartbreaking thing about this new gun violence prevention office is where's our seat at the table? Like it's so radical that it takes away any voice of the gun owner and it funds the other side, which is going to further it's just going to spiral because they're going to have so much money, they're going to be able to invest so much in technology, and we're all going to get drowned out, and we're the ones that are actually in the on the ground doing the work. And so, that's something that we all should be aware of.
Yeah, I think people need to understand, and I always harp on this episode, right? But it's when Jake and I went to San Jose State, and we took a lot of crap from the gun collective and that Cobra Kai-ish attitude they have about firearms, whatever. Um, and no one understood what we were doing. And maybe I didn't think about it. I didn't think it through to where what would it look like if they saw Mike Sodini on a flyer with the Moms Man Action people, right? Like I didn't think enough because I think people could figure that out. Like, oh, he's this is his play. This is how he's doing it. He's going to go up there and screw up their narrative. But I'm standing in front of the sign that says "End Gun Violence," and I'm looking at this sign and I'm like, Jesus, when did we let them have that? We just let them have it.
Yeah.
They had like end guns, don't kill puppies. Like everybody in the world doesn't want puppies to die. Like nobody wants gun violence. Like you have to be like a hardcore gangster to want gun violence. Like if your life revolves around gunplay, like you're on a totally different planet. So we let them have those phrases. We let them have a color, orange. We let them have a month, and we don't say anything. And today I'm dropping. Kevin and I were talking about it. We thought it'd be fun to drop a post that says "End Gun Violence Month" with the orange, on the backdrop of what we believe. Because once again, I feel like we need to start crowbarring ourselves into these debates, and don't go out there and be an asshole.
No.
Like I don't want gun people out there to do these gotcha moments, or I think we can take the high road in this, but we need to be at those spots. We need to have representation. We need checks and balances. Just like Derek, you check me sometimes if I have a message that you're like, I don't think that's optically is going to go over with this group, right? We need to be able to do that there with them. And now that we have our own solutions, because like I'm so confident going into Aspen, going into all these places that I've gone into, where I'm like, I got a solution for everything. Oh, you want to educate the youth? I got Derek. I got Devin Perkins from Kids to Kings, right? You want to go to underprivileged, underserved neighborhoods? I got Maj, right? I got Kevin Dixie. Like I got Guns for Everyone out of Colorado, Edgar, right? The Latino community. Like I got a solution for everything. I could put someone forward that could speak to those crowds, that could pass the positive message, the trusted messenger, right? We got Walk Talk America doing suicide prevention. We had Sarah at Hold My Guns doing safe storage practices. All the coalitions, like we have enough to where we can go where we don't have to be like, I don't have to just default to Pride from My Cold Dead Hands. We could be like, we have it already. We're already doing it. Here it is.
So one thing that you said that stuck with me, and I wanted to give you this positive affirmation, is never ever apologize for doing something that you feel is right. You grab that microphone, that's your microphone. It's you, and don't let somebody shame you just because they're not comfortable enough to go to that event. And so that's the one thing is, and I will say that to everybody at home, is sometimes it's very, very lonely to stand alone in those rooms. but at least you're in those rooms. And so don't ever let somebody feel that you're less than just because you're doing something that they don't feel comfortable doing. It takes tremendous courage to do and walk into those rooms. So I
Yeah,
saw
no,
that
I
beef.
appreciate that.
I saw that, and that's not what we need. That's the last that we need, is to tear each other down just because you don't want to, you can't go into those rooms because you don't have the intestinal fortitude to do so. So,
No, and I
that's all
love
I'll
it when
say.
people, and there are some gun people out there that have admitted that to me. Like
Right.
I remember talking to Matt Tassner. He works for Bill Hicks as a distributor. He goes, "Man, I don't know how you do it. I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to stay calm. I'd start sort
Well,
of, you know what
what
I
you what
mean?"
you
So,
what you have to do is practice, and it
yeah,
takes all the you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I've done it for a very long time. I've gone to their marches. I've walked through the city of Eugene. I've gone to their protests. I'm not wearing orange, but I go to their orange events so I can hear, I can listen, because that's how I can create a message that can resonate, so I can reach their kids. Because no matter what happens, I love their kids and I want to protect their kids, even if their parents are kind of misguided. So
yeah. Kevin, is there any other data that we need to take a look at? You got anything else that was interesting that we want to highlight? Oh, you know what I'd love to highlight before we leave? I want to highlight that one section of the article. I don't know if you have it. The one that I was texting you, Derek, and I said the 4 categories. Just want to talk about that real quick. Let's see. Where did I
the
say that?
four cavity.
Yeah, the breakdown. Okay, so it's in the impact of gun violence on children and adolescents from kfff.org.
Yeah, that was hyperlinked in that study. That's where I got that. So, Kevin, if you want to pull that up, you can just scroll down. Oh, there it
I
is.
think
Okay,
we got it
perfect.
here.
And all I did, was, oh, actually, this is a separate one because this has an average. This went from 2012 to 2022, and
Was it in the original report?
I believe so.
Yeah, if you go to that, and I could just talk about the 4 categories that it has because I got it up on my phone right now.
Okay.
But so it breaks out number 1, neighborhood and community violence. Right? It says that's the number 1 killer. Firearm homicide in adolescence. But we know exactly where and what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the Chicagos, the Comptons, the underprivileged, underserved areas that get the lack of resources and funding, the lack of energy people put into those communities is a huge cause of that. And we know that it's education, it's all kinds of things, and that's why I love what Devin Perkins is doing with Kids the Kings, because he's giving an opportunity for kids that normally aren't introduced to firearms in a healthy manner to actually have that experience. Because I think traditionally, a lot of people, when they think of kids, and Derek, I know this isn't in any way like geared towards you, but I think when people think of kids with firearms, they think of little white hunters, right? Like it's natural, right? It's rural areas, hillbilly kids, like all these, like those are the ones that grow up with guns. Like no one ever thinks of the youth, the minorities. And then the second category is suicide. This is adolescent, firearm death. Suicides are the second leading cause of death amongst adolescents, and many of those suicides involve a firearm. So this is what Chris Jakovic was saying. Kevin, this is what you were talking about. This is why it needs to be in there. I saw Ghost Tactical it frustrates him that suicides gets left out, especially with how many people we all know that have taken their own life with a firearm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Third one is domestic or intimate partner violence. Women and children are often victims of intimate partner violence, which involve firearms. This is this also has kind of usually a correlation with suicide, right? Because how many times have we heard somebody killed their spouse and their children and then took their own life as well? So there's a little
Absolutely.
overlap with suicide in there. Um, and then the fourth one is mass shootings, which is the smallest one, but they broke it out into a category. Although mass shootings include school shootings, um, although mass shootings, including school shootings, account for a small portion of firearms related deaths, they can negatively impact the mental health of children and communities at large. It goes back to your point about their mental health, right? My daughters would come home from school after their mental health would be shot after they did mass shooting drills. And I remember I've told this story before with both of them. I would ask them if they knew what fentanyl was, and they were like, no. So they're afraid of a mass shooter, but they're not afraid of something that somebody's going to give them at a party and kill them, which is way more likely to happen these days than somebody showing up to school and shooting it up.
Yeah.
But anyways, so those are the four. Are there any are they missing anything? I mean, straight negligence, right?
Yeah.
Accidental shootings.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
and I say, like, on our thing, like, our mantra is zero firearm accidents, the only acceptable goal. I have a real I have a real problem with the word accident, because it's really not accident, it's really negligence. It's, why did
mhm.
that kid come in contact with a firearm? Why was that kid not properly educated? But I don't want to shame people. Like, I have to be careful with the way I put out the information. That's why I coined the term accident over negligence. In reality, it is negligence when a young child gets hurt with a gun, typically. And so, it's just something that, it's words have meaning, which is,
Mm-hmm.
it's what I've learned a lot about what we're doing is they can be taken a certain direction if we're not careful, and used against us. So
Yeah, and G Webs is drawing attention to Erica's big day. See how Erica safely helps her friends avoid some pretty dangerous situations. Everyone can learn from Erica's bravery and wisdom, learn how to be safe and avoid dangerous situations. He said that his daughter saw Erica's big day flyer on the table and asked, "Mommy, who's that? Is that me?" Erica's big day it's a book, right? It's a children's book.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of helped with the messaging. Yet I don't talk to the guy anymore because I didn't get any kind of credit or any kind of help. So it is what it is. It's just a book. And that's, we put a lot of interest into books, and we have to understand that not all children learn that way. They learn, kinesthetically. It could be hands on. So there's all these different things, and we're talking about books. I know Ron Pikus has a couple books that are good, and Yehuda does books. It's,
Yeah, the Pew Pew Jew. Yep.
yeah, for sure. So and I don't want to take anything about from Erica Big Day. It's a good resource for parents, and that's the important thing is it starts this conversation, and so that's, there's a lot of good resources out there if parents just seek it out. And I think that's the biggest challenge for us in our industry is everything's skewed against us. We have the tech censorships, we have all these other things, and so, everything is stacked against us.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I mean, I'm so shadow banned on my social media that I have friends that say I never see anything you post, and it's funny because you know I'd have to go through and probably do a complete scrub of my social media to get rid of all the posts where I use suicide. I didn't realize in the beginning, like if you put suicide prevention, like in a hashtag or suicide or firearm, all this stuff, that that it'll completely freeze and just destroy growth of your of your social media. So it's really tough when you look at. It's hard for us to get the messaging out. It's
Well,
it's
I think I think what's hard about that too is there's lives attached to it. It's not like, there's some people in the industry that, they sell, like product through their pages, and that's the platform that they use. But for us, we're trying to reach people. We're trying to get awareness. We're trying to get support. And so the fact that we're stymied, it takes away our ability to really reach people to help save lives.
And it's a little bit of both sides, I think. I mean, I know I help social media for a gun range, and they're uh, short YouTube short with a shooting a cool weapon that's popular gets 15, 20,000 views like nothing, but talking about mental health and suicides with the
Hmm.
firearms community, 19 views. It's
I
just
know
it's not popular. Nobody's talking about it. It's a tough mountain to climb.
it is.
yeah, it's a shame. But once again, going back to why it's so important to fund these organizations like your organization, it's just we need the money to get the word out to even traveling. Like I think about all the events that I'm asked to attend and no one has a budget to even fly me there, but they really want me there, or, and it's just like, you can't show up to something. Like I'm showing up to something at the end of the month in Salt Lake City. It's a end this stigma, and I'm representing the gun industry. They're giving me the platform. They're letting me have an hour and a half to speak. And it's
Wow.
basically about, yeah, it's about end this stigma. And I'm going to come and say there's a stigma as gun people that, we face. There's a reason why we don't want to get help and they need to hear it. Right. But I got to buy a plane ticket. I had to register with the conference and, I got to get a hotel room. Then I got meals, right? And it's just like people expect me to be there and people want me to be there, but they got to understand that like we can't show up to these things. You got to take time out of your day. That's time out of my work, although it's an overlap, right? But
Yeah.
it's just so important that we figure out a way to get our own industry to figure this out. To say this is helping vets is fantastic. Like we need to help vets, but we also have to understand that there's more than just vets as gun owners. Like vets are just one piece, and there's a lot of overlap. Um, there's nobody that doesn't want to help vets, but it just seems like every gun company I talk to, they're like, "Oh yeah, we do donate. We already do this," and it's always 9 times out of 10, it's always some kind of veteran based 501c3. And I don't want you to stop donating to vets. Vets need as much help as possible. But there are so many vets that have come to me and said, I love what you're doing because you're not singling us out. Right. Like
Hmm.
everyone's, oh, the broken vets is like people get tired of hearing that. You know what I mean? Like this is a way to do something for all of us. Like what you're doing, Derek, it needs to be funded. You need to have money to take the show on the road. It's super important. I can't stress that enough.
I
By the way,
appreciate that.
before we wrap up, why don't you tell everybody that's come on late what you got planned coming up?
Coming up in July, I'm actually working with Vaultec Safe. They're our sponsor for the tour. I'm actually doing a Midwest tour where we're going to start off in Kansas and we're go to Oklahoma, then we're going to go to Arkansas, and then we're going to finish back up in Missouri. And we're going to hit, I think I have 11 classes in 6 days, and the pedal to the wood, and going from class to class. But it's something where I get outside of the Pacific Northwest and be able to get other kids involved from other parts of the country. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I've been putting a lot of work into that. So, obviously I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to speak about it here. And it's going to be a big deal. I'm going to do some video work with Voltec, and I'm really, really excited. And so
Uh,
G Webs, if you
how
know anybody that needs a guest for a podcast, I'd love to go on there if you have room.
I was just thinking we got to get G Webs, Kevin.
Yeah.
We gotta get G was on the
He
WTTA
does
podcast.
great work. So
Oh, he does.
um,
He's awesome. He's
yeah,
been a big. You know, it's just funny. Like there's certain people that I realized lately. I'm like, we've never had that person on the podcast. You know what I mean? We've had some people on the podcast 3 times, and it's just like there's all these other people in the community that I want to shine a light on and have a discussion with because they bring so much. I mean, the other day, G Webs was just like hitting home run after home run with his ideas. So G Webs, we gotta talk, but um,
he has to bring the
you know.
dog. He has to have his co-host.
Absolutely. We love dogs at Walk the Talk
Yes,
America. Yeah.
absolutely.
No, but I just want to thank you for jumping on, man, and dissecting some of this and having the discussion around it. I'm really glad that you're taking your show on the road.
Thank you.
I can't for the life of me figure out why every single safe company wouldn't want a piece of you. Like to me, you you have the captive ear of every parent. And even if I didn't understand what you're doing, as the marketing person of any safe company, I'd say this is a guy that we want to at least present the different options. And I want to make sure that my option comes first and foremost over everybody else's.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so I'm glad Vaultec, I've had my issues with Vaultec. I tried to get them involved in Walk Talk America a long time ago, but I think I need to give them their flowers if they got behind you at least.
Absolutely. I mean, so I've been using their product since 2019, and because I just love the product. It's very intuitive. It's, good quality technology, ever evolving. And then the year before last, they came on as a title sponsor, and so it's been great to kind of see them. I'm going to do a safer together video like what Rob Pincus did with them, and so it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to kind of showcase the work that we do and have their camera crew there to kind of to film it. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I just hope people can see it. It's the whole tech thing where you put something out. Like I did a post yesterday, just kind of messing around. I put out a meme, and the meme got like 500 views, which I don't normally do memes on Kids Safe, like but our regular content gets like two or three likes, and which and I'll say this to you to kind of pump you guys up is we don't do this stuff for the likes. We don't do this stuff for the notoriety of the trophies. We do it because it's something that's important to us, but it's also important to the community. So I could care less about how many likes I get on a post. I just want people to be able to see what we're doing, so we can get the sponsors the spotlight that they deserve for supporting us, but also attracting new sponsors, but also the public aware of the people that are doing the work.
Yeah, yeah, it's easy to get a lot of likes on some simple, agreeable statement or some funny meme. But 10, 15 people listening to this conversation, they actually soak it in. It's a lot more valuable than 500 likes. And hell, Mike, it's not even a safe company, manufacturer. What if all those kids were learning with a certain brand of firearm that they got comfortable shooting with? That might lead to long-term customers. I don't know.
I
Right. And
I
this is the future.
I'm no marketing manager, but it makes sense to me, I guess.
Hey,
So
that's, we're laughing and smiling, but this is not a joke, everybody. Shooting
this is
sports
real.
yeah,
This is
this
real
is
life.
shooting sports. I'm telling you, in my opinion, it's dying. And I hate to see it go that way. And I get it. There's a bunch of kids in Wisconsin and maybe in the, places that are like not where I live, but I'm talking about overall. We need to get back to the youth. And this article that Derek and Devin and I wrote with Kevin, this article kind of highlights the importance of that for the industry. These are future customers. So Kevin, you make a great point. These are future customers. A lot of these kids come up playing these video games and they know the brands already, but they don't know anything about the guns, the actual guns themselves, right? Like how many people play Call of Duty and all that stuff. Now we need to teach them the rest of this. And what better way, like get away from the video game. Let's get you out there for real with this thing. And then let's get people back and excited about shooting sports, right? Like this only helps the industry as a whole. And if you think about it, the average firearms industry 2A community person, if they want to donate money to something, a cause, many of these causes are linked to anti-gun. They take money from anti-gun organizations or they back anti-gun. There's a lot of backdooring and a lot of I've seen it, right, where people say, oh, I give to this organization, and someone from a gun community says, oh, I'll never give to that organization because they do this, right? Yeah. Derek doesn't do that. Walk the Talk America doesn't do that. Like, we don't get any money from anti-gun things. We don't support red flag laws. We don't. So like, give your money, be philanthropic, give your money to people that you know are not going to use it in any negative way that only lifts up the firearms community. Just, it makes sense.
I will say this, okay? And I hope I don't get heat for it. Back at the beginning of our program, I actually got money from Levi's. Okay. So Levi's, anti-gun, I got their money. And what I did is I took it and I bought rifles so I could educate kids with that money. And so, they had a policy that they would donate X amount to nonprofits that are diverse and all inclusive. We met the requirements. They gave us, I want to say, like $3,200, which I ended up putting it into the program. So I use anti-gun money to buy guns with guns.
But that's brilliant, Derek. Yes. That's brilliant.
Yes,
that is brilliant. Like, people that would give you crap for that, they are not looking down the field, because that is amazing. Like, if an anti-gun, someone who supports anti-gun laws and whatever, the common sense, whatever the stuff they spew, wants to give you money for you to continue your work, I think the joke's on them, not on you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Because I used their requirements against them, because obviously it opens them up for lawsuits. I mean, they could discriminate against us, and then they would be opening themselves up for lawsuits. So they really don't have any other option than to write us a check, and it's spent like everybody else's money, and I felt good at the end of the day because I was able to get the stuff that I need to make sure that I can educate kids.
Yeah, I'm not sure a lot of our people would understand that, but it really is brilliant if anyone here has a 501c3 and they're able to get anti-gun money and put it towards the cause, and
you could.
Yeah. I think we try to get money all the time. We get shut down. So,
okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I've never been able to, Kevin and I laugh. We've never been able to get a grant. We've never, it's been tough.
They find out about Mike's male modeling career and they shut.
Oh, do they?
You think that's what's holding us back?
Oh, no.
No,
well, at least they didn't say it was Rob Pincus.
Yeah, that's right. Right. No, but seriously, on a serious note, like, it's hard enough to get funding. If you can get that money from that side. I mean, Maj and I were joking about that on the podcast the other day, Kevin. Remember, he said, there's a number that, and I have a playbook that if the anti-gun side came to me, I know where our holes and weaknesses are, and I could exploit them. And he's right. He's right, because I know where our holes and weaknesses are. And if I was to jump ship like that guy from Kimber, the guy who used to be the president of Kimber, I would be deadly. I would know exactly how to rile people up, and I would know exactly how to put the gun side on the spot. I mean, I know exactly what I'd say if I was a lawyer and I had you on the stand. And maybe not you, Derek, but like there's quite a few. There's quite a few people that I could call out, and I could call out companies too.
Yeah,
I would never do that because I got to sleep at night and be able to look at myself in the mirror. But I'm just saying, Maj is right. Like, we got to do better. And
part of that playbook was just getting on and talking about things. So many people see, maybe anti-gun companies will use this data, and everybody has a negative reaction to Ad Council Research Institute because they constantly see them used against it. We just got on here and used that data to support what Derek's doing. So don't just shy away from a conversation just because of, I don't really love how it's used everywhere I see it. Use it for you. Provide solutions.
Yeah. Well, that was the whole. So
I would love to talk to somebody from the Ad Council that had that anti-gun stance and have Derek sit there and go, "Oh, I use you as a commercial. You're the best." You know, like keep doing what you're
Oh,
doing, because everything you're doing is actually strengthening what I'm doing. I'm wondering what the
yes.
face with it, like,
Just start sending checks, will you please?
yeah, it's kind of like when people figured out, like, oh, you know, every time Obama would, you know, talk about gun restriction, it would just send sales through the roof, and hence him
Yeah,
becoming one of the greatest gun salesmen of all time. It's
yeah,
like, ugh, you know, that's a tough one to hear, that, you know, what you think you're preaching about, you're responsible for causing
yeah.
more of it, you know. But listen, man, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Uh, Thank you for coming on and
Absolutely.
jumping on and looking at these numbers. And to everybody that stuck with us through this hour and a half, we appreciate you like always. And,
Absolutely.
you know, let's do it again sometime soon,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, thank you guys for everything. I'm your biggest cheerleader. I want to see you guys win because I know you guys want to see me win. And so
Yeah,
whatever I can
likewise.
do to help, and you know, because it's important work. You guys are doing important work. So
Hey, so are you, brother.
yeah,
Kevin,
thank you.
thank you. All of our sponsors, people that make this happen. I just want to shout out Ruger, Arms Corps, Chattanooga, Davidson's, Lipsy's, you know, a lot of distributors have really stepped up. NASGW, which is a trade organization, to make all this possible, to keep us going. Thank you so much for everything you do. And to the next time, people, thank you.